What are the president's options? Juliana Goldman, our colleague from the White House, was telling us they're limited. Let's go through those limited options.
Well, they are limited. They're not great options, but he does have a few options. And, of course, Eric, first of all, no military response. Nobody at the White House is even suggesting the U.S. is going to step in militarily. There's no appetite for that on Capitol Hill as well. Instead, the White House strategy at this point, highlight the risks and the cost of Vladimir Putin by doing this. Show support at the same time for this new government, including financial support, critical right now. And you've got John Kerry going to Kiev, a big symbolic show right there for the U.S. And then offer Vladimir Putin an off-ramp out of this crisis, some diplomatic way to save face. Now, again, the White House view here is that Russia has made the mistake here, not President Obama. A senior U.S. official over the weekend making the case that it's Putin who has miscalculated here. The Russian economy right now is vulnerable. We've seen the drop in the ruble. That's a reflection of that, and that there's a potential for more risk to come. It's already stopped. The U.S. has already stopped G8 preparations for the Sochi meeting, canceled other U.S.-Russian talks over the next few weeks, and Kerry warned on Sunday, the Secretary of State, there will be more pain unless Putin backs down.
He's going to lose all of the glow that came out of the Olympics, his $60 billion extravaganza. He is not going to have a Sochi G8. He may not even remain in the G8 if this continues. He may find himself with asset freezes on Russian business. American business may pull back. There may be a further tumble of the ruble. There's a huge price to pay.
All right, and let's talk about the other next steps that could be out there if the U.S. wants to implement those levers. Visa bans on Russian officials, asset freezes for Russian officials deemed responsible for all this. Again, toss them out of the G8 and over the longer term, perhaps kick them out of the World Trade Organization, freeze access to U.S. banks. That's potentially painful. And sever, ultimately, commercial ties. Tell U.S. businesses, Eric and Stephanie, that they can't do business in Russia. We're a long ways away from that.
Peter, some of those things America can do on its own. Some of those things require international cooperation. What are you hearing down there about the steps America can and will take on its own?
Well, again, as you said, a lot of this depends on Europe. They're much more tied to Russia in terms of the economy. Obviously, that energy link, the natural gas, is critical. At every step of the way, the United States needs Europe on board, and that's why a lot of these steps would be painful and are not likely to be taken, certainly in the short term. What's important here, again, now is this off-ramp and getting the Europeans to buy into this. The notion of addressing Vladimir Putin's central concern, why he went in there in the first place. He says he's worried about Russian interests in the Crimea, of course, their naval base there, and Russian speakers protecting their rights. If you can get international observers in there, as the president offered to Vladimir Putin over the weekend, then ultimately that's something that could be a diplomatic path out, allow him to reach a new deal with the new Ukrainian government without having a shot fired. The White House says the door is still open to that, according to Putin, but Eric, it's obvious he hasn't embraced it yet.